Welcome to our first Commitment 2020 political debate before the November election. Good afternoon, I'm Doug Fernandez.
And I'm Shelley Rabando. KOAT and the Albuquerque Journal have partnered this political season to allow you to hear directly from candidates running for important offices in our state. And for the first time, the two women running in one of the tightest congressional races in the country face off in a televised debate.
It's the race for New Mexico's 2nd Congressional District. As you can see on this map, it's the area that covers southern New Mexico. Democrat Xochitl Torres Small currently holds this seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. Her opponent is Republican Yvette Herrell, a former New Mexico state lawmaker.
Earlier this month, an Albuquerque Journal poll asked New Mexicans who they would vote for. The results had incumbent Xochitl Torres Small with a slight advantage at 47% and Yvette Herrell at 45%. And at the time, 9% were undecided.
For the next hour, we're going to hear from both candidates. So let me explain the rules. I'll be moderating and asking questions along with Shelley Rabando and Kent Waltz, the senior editor at the Albuquerque Journal. You'll also hear opening and closing statements. Now, when a panelist asks a question, the candidate has 90 seconds to answer and rebuttals are permitted. The questions come from our editorial committee at Action 7 News and the Albuquerque Journal. Also, some are from viewers like you, which have all been vetted. You're also going to hear the candidates ask each other a question, and the person asking it will get an automatic 30-second rebuttal.
Both women ran against each other in 2018. It was a very tight race, with Herrell asking for a recount. So what's new about the race this year? Both women agreed to KOAT and the Albuquerque Journal debate. For the first time, we hear them together addressing the issues that matter most to you.
In a hat draw, Congresswoman Torres Small will go first in opening statements and last in closing statements. She will have 2 uninterrupted minutes for your opening statement, followed by Yvette Herrell with the same amount of time. Congresswoman, you may begin.
Thank you so much, Doug, Ken, and Shelley, for hosting this debate. And thank you to the New Mexico viewers who are engaging directly in their representative democracy. A little over 2 years ago, I decided to run for Congress because growing up in the Mesilla Valley, I seldom felt like Washington understood me, understood New Mexico, or understood our values. And that's why I am so deeply grateful that you have entrusted in me your support to represent and serve you, to do the job that I love, representing the district that I love in the home that I love. Because New Mexico's 2nd Congressional District is full of hard-working people, industrious, honest, humble people who are often overlooked and underserved. And that's why it's my job to make sure that those people are listened to, learned from, and lifted up, not just as constituents or taxpayers, but rather as real life individuals, living lives in families and neighborhoods, working hard in cities, towns, farms, and ranches. And that's why I wake up every single morning dedicated to working just as hard as New Mexicans do every single day. Working hard to deliver to New Mexico resources it so desperately needs from Washington, but also working hard to deliver to Washington something it so desperately needs from New Mexico. And that's our New Mexican values. Values like looking out for your neighbor and being willing to work with anyone to face the challenges that we struggle with together. Because we have a lot of work to do to make sure that New Mexicans can have good paying jobs without having to move away from home, to make sure that you can live a life that is healthy, safe, and free, a life full of dignity and purpose. A life where good schools, safe roads, safe neighborhoods, and decent internet, healthcare close to home aren't just privileges of a few in a preferred zip code, but rather keys to opportunity for all of us. So thank you for having me. I look forward to the discussion.
Thank you. Yvette Herrell, your opening statement, please.
Great. And I also would like to thank all of you, the KOAT and the Albuquerque Journal, for hosting this today, and a great opportunity for the voters to get acquainted with the candidates that are running for office. And you know, I served in the New Mexico State House for 8 years, so I know that I have a very good understanding of the diversity of our district, but also of the people. And having been involved with a lot of the decisions that shape New Mexico, the 2nd Congressional District, this gives me, I believe, a leg up because I've stayed connected with the district. I've talked to a number of voters, a number of our industry leaders, a number of the people in the communities, small towns, larger communities in the district. I understand what we're looking for. We need to find an answer to the coronavirus. We also need to open up our economy safely, think about getting our kids back into school. But what we really need to be thinking about is how important this election cycle is. This is way bigger than just 2nd Congressional district or even New Mexico. We are truly fighting for our one nation under God. We have got to protect our constitutional rights, the sanctity of life, our Second Amendment, our free markets, and the future of our nation and of our state. And while I'm at it, I really want to say thank you to the hard men and women working in our law enforcement. We need to be thinking about defending our police officers, not defunding them. So I want to thank them for their service in our communities and around the state and around the nation. And with that, I'd be remiss not to thank our veterans and our service members who keep our America safe. So thank you for your sacrifices and giving us the opportunity to live in a free nation so we have the right to exercise our right to vote. I am so excited about this election because I know that it is our values that matter. I know that I have been engaged with our communities and I know what people are worried about. It is time that we send somebody to Congress that really is going to represent New Mexico and not vote with Nancy Pelosi 95% of the time because she doesn't represent New Mexico. I want to take New Mexico voices to Washington. Thank you so much.
We begin with a topic that has dominated most of the news this year, the coronavirus pandemic. Our first question is from Kent Waltz with the Albuquerque Journal. Kent.
Thank you. What is your view of President Trump's handling of the pandemic, and what actions would you favor if there is another spike in cases before an effective vaccine is available? And do you think a vaccine should be mandatory?
Ms. Torres Small, you may go first.
COVID-19 has exacerbated so many of the challenges we already faced as New Mexicans. And that's why I've been ringing the alarm when it comes to our healthcare in rural communities, even before COVID-19 hit. And once it hit, I worked with rural hospitals to make sure that they had the funding. I worked with the Trump administration to deliver Medicare advance payments to Gila Regional Medical so that they could keep their doors open. I listened to New Mexican doctors who said they were struggling to find a way to serve their patients in the midst of COVID-19, which is why I worked again with the Trump administration to make sure that CMS was reimbursing doctors so that they could do literal house calls, calling their patients to reach them and serve them in the midst of the crisis. And that's why I'll continue to make sure that we have a national strategy so that states like New Mexico with smaller populations aren't fighting against California or New York for testing or for vaccines once they are available. Because we have to make sure that we are ready to respond so that we can responsibly reopen our economy and find ways to get through and defeat COVID-19 together.
Ms. Harrell, you're next.
Yeah, it's a great question and certainly one that we've all talked about over the last number of months. The CARES Act was certainly a step in the right direction and did help our small businesses and the employees that needed the help. I know there is some discussion about expanding those. I know Nancy Pelosi has stalled those conversations at least twice, but the possibility of extending the help that people need, especially our workers that need the additional income, they have expired in terms of receiving the $600 a week. And we might need to look in Congress to maybe extend that in ways that are structured to a place where they aren't overreaching in terms of spending too much, but giving the families the help they need in a structured environment. I am so proud of the administration, the way they handled the coronavirus, given the information they had at the time with President Trump shutting down the international flights to China, but also working with the information they had. And even Dr. Fauci has said shutting down those flights was enormously important. But we were able to see this president and the administration mobilize PPE, the equipment necessary, the face masks, the ventilators, the things that we needed in New Mexico and around the nation, and in fact, around the globe, because we were able to help. So I think that we are looking at hindsight is 2020. We've seen great strides take place, and I know we will be better for it in the future, but I believe we come out of this in a better place and with a stronger economy. Thank you.
Thank you. And our next debate question comes from Shelley Rabando. Shelley.
Good afternoon and thanks for being here with us. New Mexico is consistently ranked near the bottom for education, and COVID-19 is presenting even more challenges, as we know. So do you think it's time for kids to go back into the classroom, and how can the government help with the challenges they face now learning virtually?
Yvette Harrell, you go first.
Great, thank you. Shelley, this is a great question and one we've certainly had with a number of voters all over the district. Families want their children to go back to school into an environment that is safe. I believe we should be allowing the school districts, the school boards, to make those decisions. It is not a one size fits all in New Mexico. What works for Albuquerque School District may not work for Hagerman or for Hatch or for Alamogordo. We need to allow the involvement of the communities and the school districts to make the decisions, and we need to involve the families, because right now we're struggling with 50th in the state. We've been there for far too long. It's time to get our kids back in the classroom. And we are really, at the end of the day, who's paying for all of these decisions are going to be the future of New Mexico, the future of America. We need to be working collectively with our school boards, with our school districts, with our families, and get the kids back into school safely. Thank you.
Ms. Torres Small.
As a product of New Mexico's public schools, I know how important having a good education is. And that's why I've been fighting for it even before COVID-19. With a mother who was a teacher for 30 years and a father who was a school bus driver, I've seen on the ground the challenges that our local school districts face every single day. And that's why I continue to support full funding for education to make sure our kids get the support they need. And when it comes to facing COVID-19, our school districts have had incredibly, even more challenges that they've had to face. That's why I've worked with the local school districts to make sure, as a member of the House Ag Committee, that they were getting the support for food for school lunches that they could in the midst of COVID-19. That's why I work to make sure that we're investing in broadband and other technology opportunities. And the CARES Act was crucial for that. But much of that money has dried up. And that's why I worked with problem solvers, 25 Democrats, 25 Republicans, to come back to the table when leadership on all sides had left, to set an example that we can find solutions to get more funding to our schools so they can find ways to responsibly reopen and defeat COVID-19. Now, we have to make sure that we are funding our state, local, and tribal entities so that they can support their schools. And that's why I'm continuing to push for a resolution when it comes to the gridlock in Washington by working across the aisle, by reaching out to Republicans and Democrats and sitting down with the challenges we have to face together, rather than saying that another package isn't necessary, comments that my opponent has made.
Okay, time is up. Next question. Public health orders restricting business operations have forced thousands to close, and families are struggling with unemployment. What specifically are you going to do in Congress to help New Mexicans with the much needed financial help? Ms. Torres Small.
COVID-19, again, has exacerbated the challenges that New Mexicans were already facing when it comes to working to get a good job and keep a good job close to home. That's why I've worked hard to invest in infrastructure like good, safe roads, but also good, reliable internet so that people can do their job wherever they are. That's why I'm also working to make sure that our small businesses get the support they need through the Paycheck Protection Program, through the CARES Act, and hopefully through a second wave. But I also work to make sure that was delivered to New Mexicans by helping get the New Mexico Farm Credit Bureau the support it needed to provide information to farmers so that they could apply for the Paycheck Protection Program as well. That's why I stood up to my party when they tried to exclude oil and gas from the CARES Act, and instead was able to make sure that we were delivering Paycheck Protection Program support to small businesses and contractors in southeastern New Mexico, and to people, pandemic unemployment assistance to people who had lost their jobs through no fault of their own. Because we have to face this together. And when you have an industry that's responsible for 39% of our state revenue, we've got to make sure that no one gets left behind in this recovery.
Ms. Harrell, your response?
Yeah, this is another conversation that's taking place all over the district. What we need to be doing in New Mexico is open our economy safely. We need to let the decisions be made by the local business owners, by the local government, those who are most closely affected in those various communities. Yes, I think that expanding the PPP program might work if it's structured in a way that would be beneficial for those who truly need it. But really, at the end of the day, how we put our oil and gas people back to work and protect those jobs is opening up the economy globally. We all know that we have a pandemic. We know the seriousness of it, but we also have a responsibility to the health and safety of our economy, both on the federal and the state level. So on the federal level, I believe what we need to be doing is expanding the tax cuts, giving the business owners, the small business owners who are the backbone of our economy, not only in New Mexico, but nationwide, let's give them the tools they need so they can open up safely. But what we've left out of the entire equation, at least in the state of New Mexico, is the ability for the owner of the business to have a seat at the table. It is not a one size fits all. Big box stores should not have more privilege in New Mexico than the mom pop shops, the hardware stores. It is not fair that abortion clinics are open, that houses of worship are not not open. We need to allow the businesses and the local community governments to make the decisions on what's best for our local economies. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question is from Kent Waltz.
What role should Congress play in police reform following the death of George Floyd? In that context, what is your position on defunding the police? And do you support legislation to remove qualified immunity from lawsuits for police officers accused of violating a person's civil rights by using excessive force?
Yvette Herrell, you go first.
Great. And you're right. We've seen this all over the news for the last several weeks. We need to be talking about defending the police, not defunding them. I would absolutely oppose any legislation or any bill that would put more compromising burdens on our already underfunded police departments. In rural communities, Alamogordo, Mayhill, Tularosa, Hatch, all of these communities rely heavily on our sheriff's departments. And right now we're seeing the heavy burdens that the state legislature is placing on these police departments and these agencies. So we need to be giving them the tools that they need. We need to be funding them properly. We need to ensure that they have the access to what they need to ensure that every time that phone rings, a 911 call comes in, that we know that that person or that agency is going to be funded and be able to send the right people to help the community member that's calling into that. It's a shame that we've seen the anarchists, these threats of violence against private property, state property, federal property. This is unrealistic for America. This is not the America we grew up in. And to even have the conversation about defunding our police does not make sense. We don't want that in rural New Mexico. I can assure you, the people that I've talked to all over the district want our police forces funded. They want to support our law enforcement, and we need to be talking about how we help them and not hurt them. So thank you.
Ms. Torres Small, your reply.
Let me be clear, I do not support defunding the police. My grandfather was a police sergeant at Las Cruces Police Department, and he didn't talk about the job much. He really separated family and his work. But when I came back and heard stories from people living in his community about the work that he did, knowing all of the kids' names and holding them all accountable, which helped them stay out of the big trouble in the long run, I know how crucial our local law enforcement is to building our community. And when it comes to taking on the challenges of systemic racism, I know that they're a key part of that. That's why before and after voting for the George Floyd legislation, I spoke with my local law enforcement people all across the district, seeing how they were doing their job and how I could best support them. And one of the biggest things I heard was a lack of resources and a fear when they were called to a home because of a mental health challenge, that there weren't the resources within the community to support those individuals either. And that's why we can work together, giving our law enforcement, especially practicing in rural areas, who struggle for communication, who struggle to have the tools they need, who struggle to keep their personnel, giving them the resources they need to do their job, and also investing in our communities when it comes to challenges like mental health and drug addiction. We can do this only if we work together, and that's why I'll continue to push the conversation with Republicans and Democrats to get the job done.
Shelley, you have the next question.
Just weeks ago, federal agents were sent to Albuquerque for Operation Legend. What's your view on using federal law enforcement officers to crack down on violent crime happening here?
Ms. Torres Small, you go first.
Well, federal law enforcement has a role in working in New Mexican communities all of the time. I represent about 180 miles of U.S.-Mexico border, and so I know that that's a reality every single day. I also know that communities that are close to the border face special challenges when it comes to things like drug addiction or drugs that are coming through their communities. And so providing that support through HIDA and otherwise is crucial. But I want to make sure that New Mexico's 2nd Congressional District continues to have that support. And that's why I did have some concern with that announcement that I was never told where those officers were coming from and whether they were coming from New Mexico's 2nd Congressional District, because we have a lot of work that needs to be done here. And it takes coordination and collaboration, but it also takes transparency. So I'll be committed to continuing to protect people's constitutional rights, as well as making sure that we have safe neighborhoods.
Ms. Herrell, your reply.
Again, another good question, because these are just the topics of the day. It's absolutely important that this administration and the federal government react to requests, especially when they're coming from Bernalillo County Sheriff's Department asking for help. And you're right, Operation Legend was successful. We're not immune to the violence throughout this state, but we've been blessed in the 2nd Congressional District because we haven't seen that kind of violence. But when law enforcement are asking for resources, additional resources to come into their counties, their communities, I am so glad that that this president will stand up and send these resources that are necessary. Because again, at the end of the day, it's protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the general public. And I think that as we come together and again, provide the law enforcement officers the tools that they need. And we already have federal agents in the state of New Mexico. We're dotted with agencies all over the district, all over the state. So to utilize the federal agents to come in, such as the Operation Legend gentlemen and women that came in to help with the crimes that we were seeing escalate in Bernalillo County, I'm very supportive of that. And I'm thankful that this administration saw the need, met the need, and were able to comply with the request of the Bernalillo County Sheriff. So yes, thank you.
Kent Waltz, you have the next question for the candidates in the 2nd Congressional District.
Please give us your view on what are termed sanctuary cities and the debate over whether federal funds should be withheld from them for refusing to cooperate with federal officers.
Yvette Harrell, you go first.
Yeah, I appreciate this question. And no, I do not think that we should have sanctuary cities set up to protect those who are in our nation illegally, and those, many of them with the crimes that have committed, criminal backgrounds or crimes that they've committed. I think that's a disservice to the taxpaying Americans that live here and follow the law, abide by the rules. I mean, there's law and order for a reason. We have the Constitution and we have laws in place because it keeps our nation healthy. It keeps our nation, our state healthy and safe. So I'm not a fan of sanctuary cities, and I think that's a disservice to the taxpaying Americans that live in and around those cities. And I do think that is something we should consider, is pulling federal funding from some of those sanctuary cities. They're giving basically a safe house for those that are here in some cases, and most cases illegally. And again, a lot of these people that are being protected by the sanctuary cities have criminal backgrounds. And I don't think that that's fair. It's certainly a disjustice to the taxpaying citizens again, but also we have to look at how we're spending federal money. And is that a good way to spend federal resources? Or should we be helping those who need our help in terms of a hand up, those who need to help pay bills, those who are looking for better, easier, more affordable ways to pay for insurance, et cetera. So I am not a fan of federal funding for sanctuary cities.
Ms. Torres Small, your reply.
Working with our local law enforcement, I know how resource stretched they are and the challenges it takes when they have to prioritize how they are going to do their job to make sure that they are keeping their communities safe. And that's why I've worked with local law enforcement departments to make sure they receive funding, like Stone Garden funding, which recognizes the increased challenges that many law enforcement departments have and face every single day when it comes to being near the border. Now, that being said, I don't think that those resources should be conditioned on the choices that local law enforcement or local communities make in terms of how to prioritize their strict responsibilities. Instead, it should be recognizing the challenges that they face being along the border, giving them the support they need to do their jobs, to take on the greater challenges when it comes to drugs and trafficking, and to make sure that local enforcement and local government is supported.
We have been hearing from many of you at home about this debate and what you would like both candidates to address.
This next question comes from a viewer. Linda Hawkes from Tomei wrote to us about Medicaid. She wants to know if you approve of or oppose work requirements for Medicaid and why.
Ms. Torres Small, you are first.
I want to make sure that everyone can have access to healthcare close to home. And some of the most important places where that occurs is making sure that children have their best start at a good life. That's what Medicaid does. It provides opportunities for children and their parents to be able to live healthy and get a good start. That's why we should be focusing on getting support to children, regardless of what their parents are doing, so that they have the opportunities they need to succeed. And I'll continue to fight to make sure that parents have the opportunity for good work close to home, to make sure that we are investing in our communities to develop our economy, and to make sure that people have the health care they need, to have keys for opportunity rather than used as a penalty and a privilege only for the few.
Ms. Harrell, your reply.
I think the way we need to be addressing this is not Medicaid for all, but ensuring that we have affordable health care for everybody. And we can do that by ensuring that we're protecting pre-existing conditions, that we do have an opportunity to drive costs down by bringing in a free market and letting employers and families pick the physicians that are best for them, the policies that are best for them. But when we have competition in the marketplace, we can drive costs down, and we need to make sure that we're addressing transparency, that people that are right now buying vehicles know more about the vehicle than they do about healthcare. But we need to make sure that they understand we can make it where it's more affordable, where it's market driven, and that they know that when they're ready to use those policies, they are there and available for them. And we can make it on a transparency basis where those that need the help have opportunity for help from federal government. But we don't need an overreaching Medicaid for all, because that's expensive and it'll cost more than what people are talking about right now. And I believe people deserve an opportunity for the choice in the matter in terms of costs and positions.
Another viewer is asking about your campaign ads, and we're seeing a lot of them these days. Some are paid for by outside groups, others by your individual campaigns.
Now, he wants to know if either of you would agree to drop out of the race if any of your ads were proven to be a lie. Of course, this would be for ads your campaign paid for and you approved. Ms. Harrell, you go first.
Absolutely not. Our campaign, I will pride myself on not putting out anything that is not fact-based. We always cite where this information is coming from, and we're able to speak truth in our ads and get the point across. Some people may not appreciate the way in which it's done, but when people are attacking my mother in campaign ads, I think I have a right to stand up and defend myself and the integrity of my family. So no, I would not drop out of the race. I'm very proud of the ads that we've put forward.
Ms. Torres Small, your reply.
I just want to start with the facts. And the facts are that two of my opponents' ads have already been labeled misleading. And instead, I think we need to be focusing on telling the truth. So that's what I will do. And to clarify, in terms of the last question about Medicaid, the question was about the existing Medicaid program, not about any Medicaid for all. And I do not support Medicaid for all. Let's stick with the facts. Let's be honest about what we're doing here so that we can have a real discussion about ideas, so that we can debate on what we want for New Mexicans rather than slinging mud. I will continue to work to make sure that my ads are not labeled misleading. I have not had a single ad labeled as such, and I see that as a commitment that I make to make sure that we're all engaging in the facts and speaking the truth.
Thanks to both of you. Now, we have questions, our viewers at home do as well, but so do the candidates. Yvette Herrell, you can ask your first question of the Congresswoman. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. And speaking of TV ads, in your TV ads, Ms. Small, you do talk about your support for President Trump and how you work with him. You also failed to mention that you voted to impeach him twice. In the upcoming election, will you vote, yes or no, will you vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris?
So I've promised to work with anyone to deliver for New Mexico. And in the last 2 years in Congress, I've shown ways to do that because I know that we've got to build solutions together in order to get the job done. That's why, but part of working together is being willing to show respect enough to hold people accountable. It doesn't mean being a pushover. It means standing up for New Mexicans. And that's what I did when I felt like our national security was at risk, when there was a potential that the president was using his office for political gain and misusing military support to do so. But that same day, I was working to get the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement to the floor. Because another thing about being willing to work with anyone is not letting disagreements distract each other from the work that has to be done. So I will continue to do that. I will continue to hold anyone accountable, no matter whether I vote for them or not, and to find ways to move forward together.
Ms. Harrell, rebuttal?
So is that a yes or a no on voting for Kamala Harris and Joe Biden?
Sorry.
I don't believe it's a Q&A. It was a rebuttal only. Congresswoman Torres Small, your question for your challenger, Yvette Herrell.
As I've walked around the district and talked to people about the challenges they face, one of the leading causes of the challenges I see is that people have lost trust when it comes to Congress. People don't believe that their representatives are truly working for them. And that's part of the reason that I led introduction for legislation that would put a lifetime ban on members of Congress from ever becoming lobbyists. Now, my opponent voted against legislation for just a 2-year window between state representatives becoming lobbyists, effectively supporting the revolving door. So, former Representative State Harrell, how does it serve New Mexicans to allow state representatives to immediately become lobbyists?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, and I voted against that bill because we didn't have all of the information put together. I worked with parties across the aisle, both Democrats and Republicans, so that we could ensure that when we did pass a bill in New Mexico that would be effective and address the issue at hand in terms of lobbying, we absolutely would do so. But that bill was not ready. And what I will say, though, is I do believe, and this is just a little off course, but in the term limits, I think that we should have term limits on the state and federal level. And I do think that lobbying does become an issue because our special interest groups and our lobbyists become the ones driving the ship. But the bill wasn't ready, and I worked with bipartisan support on finding a bill that would work. When I served, we didn't have the right answer at the time that would address the issues completely. And I would rather do one bill that addresses it completely than try to go back and deal with unintended consequences.
Ms. Torres, small rebuttal.
I would just note that my opponent did not provide a single reason why allowing representatives to immediately become lobbyists serves New Mexico. And that makes me concerned about who it would serve.
All right, our next question in this debate comes from Journal senior editor Kent Waltz. Kent.
What are the most important actions Congress should take regarding people now living illegally in the United States? And what about those seeking to come to this country in the future?
Yvette Harrell, you go first.
We have had this discussion before, and it seems to be one that we continually have because we've not seen Congress take affirmative action in terms of making hard decisions and addressing the issue head on. We have laws on the books that really need to be addressed. We need to streamline the opportunity for people who want to come to this nation legally, get through the process without having to wait 8 to 10 years to do so. And it's costing thousands of dollars. So we need to make sure that we're allowing those that want to come in, utilize their skill set, come to America and create a better life for themselves, a means to do so without having to wait for so long. We have a terrible problem with securing our border. It is working though, the fence. I'm proud of this administration for building over 250 miles of fence. We know that that is helping to secure our borders. Our borders are very porous, not just with the illegal crossing of people, but with drug trafficking, with human trafficking. But we have laws on the books. We need to give the Border Patrol agents the tools they need to clearly work at the border and ensure our border security. But with the folks that are wanting to come here, let's do more for them. Let's start streamlining the process so that we can bring them into this nation and not have this dialogue over and over again. We see that Congress has refused to take action on it, but it's something that I would love to see us come together on, work across the aisle, bring everybody together so that we can find real solutions and enforce the laws that are already on the books.
Congresswoman, your answer.
We need strong, smart, and fair solutions when it comes to fixing our broken border policy. That's why when it comes to border security, I've worked with Republicans and Democrats to stop drugs and trafficking. That's why I work to make sure that we're getting 100% of the cars that come in through Mexico scanned for contraband. That's why I've worked to make sure that we have a recruitment and retention program for our Border Patrol agents in rural areas. Now, we also have to make sure when it comes to our border security that we have a fair and moral and clear and strong immigration system. That's why I've worked with Republicans and Democrats to reform the H-2A visa program so that farmers, like dairy farmers and pecan farmers who work year round, can have the same access to migrant farm workers, the dependable legal workforce that we all rely on. That's why I also voted for the Dream and Promise Act after sponsoring it so that New Mexicans whose only home they know is the United States are able to earn their citizenship. And that's why I've worked to make sure that military service members who are not citizens have a clearer pathway to become them. But we have to do this together because I believe that if you want to work hard and follow our laws and contribute to our economy, there should be a legal way to do that. And we can build that system together.
Continuing the topic of immigration, another question now from Shelley Rabando.
Walls are being built right now on our border, and the illegal crossing numbers are way down. A 74% drop for unaccompanied children, 89% decline for families, and a 4% reduction for single adult apprehensions. Does this mean walls work?
Ms. Torres Small, you may begin.
This means that we have to continue to invest in our border security with a mile-by-mile analysis. Because as I've walked the line with Border Patrol agents and customs officers, I've seen how different the needs are depending on where along the line you are. As I've talked to the DHS secretary, he's acknowledged that as well. That's why I introduced legislation that was supported by Republicans and Democrats in the Senate and House to do a mile-by-mile analysis so that we can best identify what you need at a specific place places in the border, places where it may take days to hours to cross that border. And so having more agents on the ground to do interdictions, having more technology to identify where potential crossers are, as well as investing in our ports of entry to make sure that the cars that are going through get scanned. Because 80% of the drugs that come in to our country are coming in through our ports of entry. That's why we should be working on all of the challenges we face when it comes to border security.
Ms. Harrell, your reply.
Yes, I think the wall is working. Another example of promises made, promises kept by this administration, and they've been able to do so and find the funding, even despite my opponent blocking the funding for the border wall and saying that it's an inefficient and use of our resources. We know that we have an obligation, again, a constitutional responsibility to the health, safety, and welfare of our country, of our New Mexicans. It is a national security issue, and we can see that certainly the wall has done a great job in curtailing the number of people coming here illegally, but always we can do more to ensure that we have enough boots on the ground, that our Border Patrol agents, our ICE agents have the tools that they need, and again, enforcing the laws we already have on the books. So certainly I would continue to stand with this president to ensure that we're building the wall and securing our borders. Thank you.
The future of the U.S. Supreme Court is now a focus of the election. Do you agree with President Trump's decision to name a nominee now, or should that person be named after the election? Also, do you support expanding the number of justices on the High Court? Ms. Harrell, you go first.
Thank you for the question. To answer your first question or your second question first, no, I do not support expanding the number of justices. The number 9 we've had in place for over 150 years. It's worked for our nation. I don't think that we need to change that. And I do think that President Trump has a constitutional responsibility to name a nominee for a vacancy that is now on the bench. And I believe that the Senate has the responsibility through our Constitution to have those hearings and to confirm the nominee. So I'm excited that they're doing this. I can't wait for them to get that process started and hope we fill that vacancy very quickly. And in my opinion, I'd love to see it done before the election. Thank you.
Ms. Torres Small, your reply.
Now, the Senate may not believe that bipartisan work is important, but that's something that I certainly hear every time I reach out to New Mexicans, every time I hold a town hall. They want to know what we've been able to do together. And so that's why it's important that we continue to build consensus and work on the issues that we face together. Now, if the Senate were to pursue a nomination right now, it does not appear that there is a bipartisan consensus, but I hope that we could look for a nominee that could achieve that. In the meantime, while they are rushing through a process, I know that it's been almost 4 months since the Senate has done anything to address COVID-19. The last thing they did was the paycheck protection fixes that we worked with them to do. In the meantime, I've worked to build a bipartisan bill, 25 Republicans, 25 Democrats, who would find a way to work together, to invest in that response. Now, when it comes to the deepest challenges that we face, the most urgent issues when it comes to rebuilding our economy, supporting kids so that they can learn, and overcoming COVID-19, you would think that they would put that ahead of their agenda.
Shelley Rabando, you have the next question.
New Mexico relies so much on oil and gas revenue, and the area in southern New Mexico covered by the 2nd Congressional District accounts for much of that production. A lot of drilling happens on state and federal land, and the industry employs thousands of New Mexicans. Would you push to open up more federal land to drilling in New Mexico?
Ms. Torres Small, you go first.
39% of our state's revenue comes from oil and gas production. And as a product of New Mexico's public schools, I know that if we were to stop drilling today, we would have to shut down our schools tomorrow. That's why I stood up to my party. And to answer the question, I would vote for Vice President Biden, but I do not agree with his oil and gas approach. I stood up to my party to say that we should not ban fracking. I stood up to my party to make sure that we are investing in responsible solutions when it comes to climate change. And I stood up to my party when they tried to exclude oil and gas from coronavirus relief, because I know that we've got to be able to rebuild together. That's what I'll continue to do, to continue to build across the aisle. That's why the New Mexico Oil and Gas Association has identified that I am a strong advocate for the industry and willing to stand up to my party when necessary. So that's the work I'll continue to do together.
Ms. Harrell, your reply.
Yeah, it is true. I mean, that is such an important, oil and gas is such an important industry, not only to New Mexico, but to the nation. Again, President Trump ran on being a nation that would be energy independent, and we need to continue to do so, opening up our economy, looking at new ways to drilling safely. My opponent did vote, though, to allow future presidents to ban fracking, which is a direct hit to this industry. We also need to make sure that when we're going to the polls this year, we are voting to hold those jobs, and we have a number of jobs, almost 100,000 jobs that depend either directly or indirectly on the oil and gas industry. We've seen a lot of things happen that are good things. We've seen high production levels before the pandemic with lower emissions. We know science and technology is driving the train. We know that we are an energy independent nation, but we need to continue to do so in a safe way and open up these jobs. But what scares me is coming back and voting to rejoin the Paris Climate Accords. That is something that Tori Small has done. That is detrimental to us. It is costly. It will cost the economy up to $3 trillion and could cost up to $6 million jobs in the nation. So we have to be careful about what we're saying and what we're listening to, because when you say one thing and do another thing in Washington, D.C., it sends a very sad message back to the district. And I will stand for oil and gas. I will stand for the jobs that are attached to it. And I will stand with President Trump to ensure that we are energy independent.
Thank you. Kent Waltz, your question for the candidates.
I'd like to respond since my name was mentioned, pursuant to the rules.
Well, go ahead.
During this, earlier in this debate, we talked about the importance of honesty and making sure that we are clear with the voters. So that's why it concerns me that my opponent continues to say false things about my stance when it comes to oil and gas. Her allegation has been debunked by the Albuquerque Journal. Her allegation has been debunked by the Roswell Daily Record. Her allegation was again debunked by the New Mexico Oil and Gas Association. I don't know what's worse, whether she said it in the first time or whether she continues to say it after it's been shown to be not true.
Kent, go ahead and ask your question now.
Thinking of military-style semi-automatic rifles, do you favor a ban on their sale? If so, what would you do about millions of those weapons now legally owned by American citizens? And please tell us what other, if any, gun law reforms you would support.
Yvette Herro, you go first.
I do not support any ban. In fact, I would not support any legislation that would have an impact on our Second Amendment. I think we need to be standing strong to protect our Second Amendment. And again, I have a voting record in Santa Fe that proves that I have been an advocate for Second Amendment. I do not believe in any kind of ban, anything that would impede on our right to own and bear arms. I am proud to have been endorsed by NRA and Gun Owners of America. So the answer to your question is no, you can count on me to protect our Second Amendment.
Ms. Tori Small, your reply.
I grew up in a household that owned guns, and I'm a hunter. And one of the earliest serious conversations I remember having with my grandfather was about that checklist that you run through every time you use a gun as a tool to make sure that you're keeping yourself and others safe. And I believe the same thing when it comes to legislation, that we have to look at it carefully and that there shouldn't be loopholes when it comes to our legislation either. There's no shortcuts. That's why I did support comprehensive background checks, a legislation that 87% of New Mexicans support and the majority of gun owners, because we know that you can both protect your Second Amendment rights and protect communities at the same time. But I stood up to my party when they tried to extend the waiting period for those background checks from 3 days to 10 days, because I know that in New Mexico, that's an entire hunting season if you're hunting deer or elk with a rifle. So I want to make sure that as I look at this legislation, I am going through every single detail. I am identifying how it will specifically impact New Mexicans and what that will look like on the ground. Now, no, legislation is not equal. It really depends on what's in the details. And that's why I commit to come to any legislation as with the expertise of being a gun owner and with the willingness to listen to and learn from people in the district. That's what I've done before. That's why I've stood up to my party in the past. And that's what I'll continue to do when it comes to gun legislation.
Our next question comes from KOAT News anchor Shelley Rabando. Shelley.
Overall, limiting your answer to one issue, what is the biggest problem facing our state and how will you fix it?
Congresswoman, you go first.
The biggest challenge, and one of the reasons why I ran for Congress in the first place, was that I felt like people sometimes had to choose between their best opportunities and the home that they love. And that's why I've dedicated every single day to make sure that we are expanding opportunities in New Mexico by investing in our economy, working hard to find what makes our places unique, and then build a marketplace around them, supporting our small businesses, making sure that people have the education and the vocational training that's good quality so they can take advantage of new jobs and opportunity. That's why I will work diligently to make sure that New Mexico is not left behind when it comes to the World Wide Web, access to the internet, and cell phone service. That's why I've worked to invest in resources, getting $100 billion into the House's infrastructure package in order to expand in our rural broadband coverage. Because we can't be left behind in this economy. We have to work together to build it.
Thank you. Yvette Harrell?
Yeah, the economy is the number one issue. It's facing New Mexicans and quite frankly, facing Americans. We need to come to the table and ensure that the small businesses have the tools they need to reopen their doors and open their doors safely. It's not a one size fits all. We need to be allowing the business owners to come to the table and make, again, the decisions that work for them, the small communities and local governments. On the federal level, we need to be extending the tax cuts and providing the tools that these small businesses need so that we can put people back to work. And we are all suffering, and we all see it nationwide, statewide. We don't have a ready workforce, and we do need to work on that. But right now, what we need to be doing is focus on New Mexico families and make sure that the doors will open to businesses. We can shop anywhere, reboost our economy, restore the American dream, and be ready, willing, and able to work with those that are putting people to work so that they are ready, have the tools they need, and are not going to be hamstrung by federal regulations, by overburdened government. In fact, we need limited government and more federalism. We need people to be able to have the ability to make the decisions that fit their needs, fit their families, fit their industry. So standing up for our economy is the number one issue. Finding a cure, a vaccine that works, that we can feel is safe and know will work is another big issue. But we can combine those, work together as a state, as a nation, and get our economy regrowing again.
For years, maybe decades, we've been paying more for health coverage and getting less. Many families are on financial life support or have gone bankrupt because of it. What is the answer to truly affordable health care for every single New Mexican? Ms. Harrell, you go first.
Truly, to me, the most important issue would be making it a free market situation. We need to, again, protect pre-existing conditions. We need to make sure that people aren't having to choose between paying rent or home payments, mortgages versus healthcare. We need to make it affordable. How we do that is increase transparency so families and businesses know what they're paying for. They know what the costs are up front. But we also need to open a free market and give the consumer more choices. When we have choices in who our physicians are, what our policies look like, it's simpler and it's easier and it's more affordable for the consumer. This way we drive an economy of free markets, we drive the costs down and give those that need the insurance, need to purchase it for, again, individually, family, or for their businesses, the choices they need, and they can make affordable choices that help them drive the cost down where we can't get everybody insured. Thank you.
Ms. Torres Small, your reply.
As I've talked with constituents across the district, one thing I've heard repeatedly is how difficult it is to get healthcare and to be able to pay for it. And that's why I've worked hard on those very issues, whether it's voting on a bipartisan legislation to give Medicare the power to negotiate on behalf of seniors for lower drug care prices, which would also impact drug care prices for Americans across the country. Or whether it's working with veterans to try to support their challenges when it comes to traveling to the VA by trying to get communities to apply for grants that would provide support for veterans to travel, and also engaging in private healthcare providers to make sure that they know how to contract with the VA through the Mission Act. Because we have to find ways to expand coverage in a way that makes sure everyone can pay for their coverage. Now, we absolutely have to defend our pre-existing conditions. That's why I've consistently voted for bipartisan legislation to support pre-existing conditions, and why I oppose any threats like the threat in the United States Supreme Court right now that would take away coverage for people with pre-existing conditions. We also have to invest in getting more healthcare providers closer to home, because that's another cost associated with our healthcare. And that's why I've co-sponsored bipartisan legislation to increase resources for doctors and nurses who practice in rural areas. And that's why I will continue to work to drive down the cost of healthcare for everyone so that we can get healthcare closer to home.
Our state has a long and proud history regarding our military bases and installations, but is New Mexico too reliant on Uncle Sam for those high-paying jobs and the billions in purchases to New Mexico companies and the tax revenues those positions generate? Congresswoman, you go first.
When I talked about building our economy, one thing I said was looking at what makes a place unique and then building a marketplace around that. So in some cases, it will be our robust military installations like White Sands Missile Range and supporting the private contracting that can occur there, that can only occur when we have good, reliable internet and strong and robust education. There are other places where there'll be great private opportunities when it comes to making sure, again, that we have that good, reliable internet to do that work and making sure that we're supporting our small businesses. It also means that we have to have right-sized regulations so that smaller businesses can compete on a level playing field with the larger corporations. And we have to make sure that we're holding larger corporations accountable to make sure, again, that we're lifting everyone up. But it also means that we have to develop what makes our places unique. And that's why I was proud to work with President Trump, with Democrats and Republicans on the Great American Outdoors Act, which identifies opportunities to invest in our public lands that help support tourism and other opportunities for economic development. There are clear ways that we can invest in our future that builds both resiliency and supports more opportunity for others. And that's what we've got to do by recognizing what are the unique parts of our economy, of our communities, and building a marketplace around it.
Ms. Harrell, your reply.
Well, it's absolutely no secret that New Mexico is heavily reliant on the Department of Defense and other jobs related to the federal government. And that's why I said as a state representative, and I say now, we've got to diversify our economy. We are really blessed here to have the natural resources we have with mining oil and gas, but we lost a timber industry because of the spotted owl. We lost opportunities in our state to keep people employed. So we need to be looking at ways that we can diversify. We are very heavy-handed when it comes to state regulations on small businesses. We need to clean that up. We need to fast-track permitting. We need to be helping businesses come here and relocate here and expand here instead of making it more of a hindrance. We have so much to offer in the state of New Mexico, but we are not competitive in this state and we're not competitive in this region. In fact, just look around at the unemployment rates in our neighboring states are sometimes double digits lower than ours. And right now it's more critical than ever. We have opportunities here, but we always rely on a government handout instead of utilizing the resources here, the people here, the innovation here, and the opportunities here. So we need to come together. And again, limited government. Let's give the power back to the people. Let's let people expand their businesses and let's enjoy some prosperity that we were able to grow up in that environment. Let's all come together and stop the overregulation and stop keeping ourselves away and allowing government to keep us off of our public lands and out of our public places where we know we can infuse a great and safe.
Time is up. Okay, it's time to hear final statements from both congressional candidates. So Xochitl Torres Small was first for opening statement, so she is last this time around. Ms. Harrell, you have 2 minutes.
Great. Well, again, I can't thank all of you enough for allowing us this opportunity. I think it's critical that voters get to hear directly from the candidates. And as again, this could not be a more important election cycle than it is right now. I am excited about this because I understand what the voters are looking for. They are not looking for somebody who represents the values of Nancy Pelosi 95% of the time. That's not conducive to New Mexico. We are proud of our gun rights, proud of life. I am unashamedly pro-God, pro-life, pro-gun, pro-business, and pro-family. Those are the values that are important to the New Mexico 2nd Congressional District. Right now, as we come to the crossroads of making the decision on who to vote for, we need to decide who best represents our values. And again, Nancy Pelosi does not represent my values, and I know she doesn't represent most of this district. So we need to be thinking about somebody who wants to vote with Nancy Pelosi 95% of the time, who voted to impeach President Trump not once, but twice. Let's come together and put our Christian values, our values for free markets, and our values for New Mexico first. We deserve a seat at the table who can encompass all walks of life in our district, all the diversities of our industries, and who can work directly with this president and across the aisle. I have a proven record to have done just that on the state level. So I find myself in a position that gives me adequate information and the ability to represent the people of New Mexico, because it's about relationships. And when you're visiting with people both sides of the aisle, and when you understand what the needs are, we can do the right thing by putting a conservative voice in Washington, D.C. somebody who cares really about what's going on here. I won't say what's going on here and then do a different thing in Washington. Actions speak louder than words. And I'm ready to put my money where my mouth is and take your voice to Washington, D.C. So let's keep praying for this nation, for this state. And I would humbly ask for your vote. And I appreciate everybody taking the time to watch this evening. And again, thank you, Doug, Shelley, Kent, for doing this for us.
All right, time is up. Ms. Dora Small, your 2-minute closing statement.
Thank you, KOAT, for hosting this robust discussion, and thank you to the viewers, as well as to former State Representative Yvette Herrell for participating in our democracy. I decided to run for Congress 2 years ago, and I promised that I'd be willing to work with anyone to deliver for New Mexico. And throughout the last 2 years, I've forged opportunities to do just that. Because when it comes to our broken border policy, when it comes to making sure people have access to quality healthcare close to home, and when it comes to expanding new opportunities for farmers and for others in our robust economy, I know that good solutions, common sense solutions, don't come with a party label. 80% of the drugs that come in from Mexico come through our ports of entry, and yet just 15% of the vehicles that come through get scanned. That's why I helped host a bipartisan field hearing to bring representatives to the border to talk with customs officers, and then to introduce legislation to get something done. When it comes to our healthcare, I heard from doctors who are struggling to reach their patients in the midst of COVID-19, which is why I worked with the Trump administration to make sure that doctors could get reimbursed for telephone calls to provide their patients with care. And I worked with Gila Regional Medical Center to make sure that they had Medicare advance payments to help keep their doors open. And when it comes to trade, I was proud to be presiding on the House floor, bringing the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement to the floor, because I heard from farmers. I heard from dairy farmers who were struggling to pay off mortgages and pay their workers because of the low price of milk. And that's why I'm proud that we were able to negotiate for a higher price for milk. And now I'll continue to work with Republicans and Democrats to hold folks accountable to that. Because I know that the only way we get things done is by working together. That's why I work every single day to deliver for New Mexico by building bridges across all sides. That's why the longest distance I travel.
Time is up. To both candidates, thank you for your participation in our Commitment 2020 debates.
To our partners at the Albuquerque Journal, thank you for your commitment to politics and making sure New Mexicans know as much as possible about the people they'll see on their ballot.
Remember, you are able to request absentee ballots now. The last day to request one is Tuesday, October 20th. In-person absentee voting is from October 6th through October 30th, and early voting runs from October 17th through Halloween. And Election Day, as you know, is November 3rd.
You can find all of those dates in the debate you just saw at KOAT.com and at the Albuquerque Journal website, abqjournal.com.
Thank you for joining us for this Commitment 2020 debate covering New Mexico's 2nd Congressional District.